Everyone thought D'Angelo's death was natural, until his official autopsy report dropped. What his family just revealed doesn't just change the story, it changes everything we thought we knew about him. The music world is in shock tonight following the release of D'Angelo's official autopsy report, a revelation that has left fans stunned and heartbroken all over again. What many believe to be a peaceful, natural passing now appears to tell a very different story. According to sources close to his family, the findings unveiled details no one could have anticipated. Discoveries that shed new light on the mysterious final days of the neo-soul icon. Could his death truly have been from health complications, or is there something deeper that the world never knew? What the family has now confirmed has changed everything we once thought we understood about his untimely end. For decades, D'Angelo-born Michael Eugene Archer wasn't just a performer. He was a revolution in sound. With Brown Sugar and Voodoo, he reshaped the landscape of R&B, blending soul, funk, and vulnerability into something timeless. Yet behind the velvet voice and effortless genius, there was always a sense of struggle, a man waging quiet battles with fame, expectation, and himself. When news of his sudden death first broke, reports cited complications from an undisclosed illness. Fans mourned, but confusion lingered. Friends described him as deeply spiritual, thoughtful, and reclusive, though they admitted something had changed in the months leading up to his passing. His once magnetic aura had dimmed, replaced by a quiet heaviness that worried those who loved him most. The family's initial statement spoke of peace that he had passed, surrounded by love. But peace quickly gave way to questions. The official autopsy report, when finally made public, revealed troubling inconsistencies, medical evidence and toxicology findings that contradicted earlier accounts. What surfaced painted a more complex, and far more haunting, picture of his final hours. In this report, we'll look closer at D'Angelo's last chapter, the private health struggles, the revelations contained in his autopsy, and the emotional response from his family once the truth came out. Because as it turns out, the story of D'Angelo's death, like the man himself, is layered, mysterious, and still unfolding. According to those close to D'Angelo's family, one final note found alongside his autopsy report has completely reframed how the world understands his death. That note hinted at something chilling, that D'Angelo may have sensed trouble long before anyone else realized it. In the weeks leading up to his passing, his closest friends noticed subtle but alarming changes. The once magnetic performer who could command any stage had begun to withdraw from the world. He grew quiet, introspective, almost haunted. Friends recalled him disappearing for days, only to return looking exhausted and speaking of feeling unwell, physically and spiritually. Those near him later revealed that his health had been deteriorating for months, though he did his best to conceal it. Despite constant fatigue, shortness of breath, and a deep, persistent cough, D'Angelo refused to slow down. He poured himself into the studio, working on music he described as deeply personal, something that, as one sound engineer recalled, he believed would outlive him. He reportedly said he could feel his time running short. Family members, deeply worried, urged him to see a doctor. They knew his history, the years of battling stress, health issues, and the lingering toll of past struggles. But this time, something felt different. His sister would later share that just days before his death, D'Angelo complained of intense chest pain and difficulty breathing. He dismissed the symptoms, insisting he didn't want to cause concern. By the time paramedics were called to his Virginia home, it was too late. Reports show that D'Angelo had suffered a severe respiratory collapse, and all efforts to revive him failed. At first, the official explanation cited pneumonia and related complications, but the simplicity of that story quickly unraveled. Fans questioned how someone focused on recovery and wellness could decline so rapidly, and why the aftermath was marked by silence. There were no statements from his collaborators, no detailed clarifications, only a short announcement and a lingering sense that the full truth was being withheld. Privately, the family wrestled with how much of D'Angelo's medical history to share. He had always guarded his privacy fiercely, never wanting headlines about his pain or speculation about his choices. But when the autopsy report arrived, what it revealed was too significant to ignore. According to insiders who reviewed the findings, the report's contents were both heartbreaking and revealing. Pneumonia, it turned out, was only one piece of a larger, more complex puzzle. Examiners found signs of chronic inflammation in his cardiovascular system and early signs of organ stress, evidence that his body had been enduring prolonged respiratory strain. Toxicology results added another layer to the mystery. Trace amounts of prescription medications and natural sedatives were detected, the kind often used for anxiety, insomnia, and pain management. The levels weren't excessive, but experts noted that the combination could have weakened his immune system, leaving him vulnerable when illness struck. Perhaps most importantly, the report disproved rumors of a relapse or overdose. There were no signs of substance abuse. Instead, it depicted a man whose body had simply been worn down by months of exhaustion and illness. When pneumonia set in, he no longer had the strength to fight it off. In a statement following the report's release, a family representative confirmed what many had feared. D'Angelo's passing was the result of multiple compounding health issues. He was fighting more battles than anyone realized. The statement read, "But he met them with quiet strength, grace, and peace." The word peace carried a deeper weight when spoken about D'Angelo. Those closest to him say that in his final year, he had been walking a quiet spiritual path, one marked by forgiveness, reflection, and surrender. He often spoke about letting go of guilt, about finding stillness after years of turmoil. His journals, later found by his family, revealed intimate writings on life, mortality, and redemption. Yet, what the autopsy confirmed something the family had initially hoped to keep private, was that D'Angelo's lungs showed significant scarring. The damage, doctors said, had built up over years, likely caused by chronic stress, smoking, or untreated respiratory problems. It was this hidden condition that ultimately made his bout with pneumonia fatal. He never wanted people to worry. One family friend said, "That was just who he was. He carried his pain quietly." Still, many fans were left puzzled. If D'Angelo had been so unwell, how had he seemed fine just days before his death? The answer, as it turned out, might have been waiting among his personal belongings, a handwritten note found tucked beside his medical papers. Those who've seen it describe it not as a farewell, but as a revelation. It was D'Angelo's final message, a reflection of acceptance, love, and grace. The note, written in his familiar flowing script and dated only days before his passing, was described by family as the most honest thing he ever wrote. It wasn't theatrical or cryptic, it was tender and unguarded. In it, D'Angelo acknowledged his flaws and the people he'd hurt, writing, "I've made mistakes. I've been lost and found again, but no matter how far I drifted, I always came back to love. That's the part of me I hope people remember." He went on to speak about faith, a theme that had quietly guided him in his later years. The letter reflected a man who believed his journey, even the painful parts, served a greater purpose. He wrote about forgiveness, about gratitude toward his fans, and about not being afraid of what was to come. Then came one line that would break his family's hearts. "If my voice ever goes silent, remember, the music was my prayer." Those words brought his sister and friends to tears. They finally understood what he'd been trying to say in his last interviews, that he wasn't just tired physically, but spiritually. D'Angelo had carried invisible battles for years, the crushing pressure of fame, creative isolation, and the struggle to balance genius with peace. The note also spoke lovingly of his son and his family, the people who kept him grounded when everything else felt unstable. He urged them to find truth and peace, even if that truth was painful. His mother, protective as ever, kept the letter private for weeks before acknowledging its existence. "He knew," she said softly. "He faced it with grace." When excerpts were finally shared among his close friends, the reactions were overwhelming. Fellow artists like Erykah Badu, Questlove, and Maxwell posted emotional tributes. Questlove wrote, "He carried pain like it was melody, deep, beautiful, and heavy." But the letter also raised an unsettling question. Had D'Angelo been quietly preparing for the end? Was this note his acceptance or his final plea for peace? That question became even more poignant when the family began sorting through his studio, a dimly lit sanctuary filled with analog gear, handwritten lyrics, and hours of unreleased recordings. Among the stacks of tapes, they found what appeared to be his final body of work, a project he had titled Return to Love. Family members and collaborators, who listened to the unfinished tracks, described them as hauntingly intimate. Unlike his earlier albums, these recordings were raw, unpolished, and deeply vulnerable. On one tape, between takes, D'Angelo's voice could be heard whispering, "If this is the last one, let it mean something." That same phrase appeared later in his notes, alongside lyrics about breathing against the wind and laying burdens down. These weren't just songs, they were confessions. His words spoke of exhaustion, transcendence, and peace after struggle. Some lines now seem almost prophetic. Verses about returning home, forgiving oneself, and finally resting. His family later confirmed that Return to Love had been recorded during his final months. though none of them realized how sick he truly was. He'd spend hours in the studio, his mother recalled. He'd come home drained, but you could tell the music was keeping him alive. It's now believed that Return to Love was D'Angelo's final offering, a musical bridge between pain and peace. A closing prayer from an artist who spent his life turning heartbreak into harmony. According to those close to the family, more than 20 unreleased recordings were discovered in D'Angelo's studio, a mix of raw piano pieces, stripped-down vocal tracks, and deeply personal spoken-word reflections. Whether the world will ever get to hear them remains uncertain. His loved ones are reportedly divided over one question: would D'Angelo have wanted his unfinished creations released? Or did he mean for them to remain private expressions of his final chapter? What's undeniable is that both the autopsy findings and these intimate recordings now form the complete portrait of a man who seemed to be preparing for his departure. Not out of despair, but out of transformation. He wasn't surrendering to death, he was evolving through it. In a quiet family statement, his loved ones captured this truth perfectly. D'Angelo's final work wasn't about dying, it was about healing. The autopsy showed us how his body failed, but his music showed us how his spirit endured. That one sentence, simple yet profound, has echoed across the world like a prayer. In the days since the family released it, those words have become a rallying cry for fans who refuse to let D'Angelo's legacy fade into silence. It's a reminder that while his voice may no longer fill the airwaves, his message continues to live in the hearts of millions who found themselves reflected in his music. Across social media, the reaction has been nothing short of extraordinary, from longtime followers who grew up on brown sugar to a new generation discovering him through streaming playlists. The outpouring of love has been universal. Twitter and Instagram timelines have become digital memorials, endless scrolls of gratitude, nostalgia, and grief. Clips of his most soul-stirring performances are circulating again. The way he closed his eyes and let his entire being flow through every lyric, the way a single note could feel like a confession. Fans have been posting concert footage from his Voodoo tour. Moments where he would step back from the mic, letting the audience sing for him. He gave us everything. One fan wrote beneath a grainy video, "Now it's our turn to sing for him." Under the hashtags #ReturnToLove and #LongLiveDan, fans have shared deeply personal stories of heartbreak soothed by his voice, of loneliness softened by his melodies, of finding strength in the raw honesty of his lyrics. Some have written about playing Untitled, How Does It Feel on repeat during sleepless nights, while others talk about Voodoo and Black Messiah as lifelines, albums that helped him feel seen, heard, and understood when nothing else did. The global response feels less like a wave of mourning and more like a collective meditation. His passing, tragic as it was, has somehow drawn people together: musicians, writers, listeners, all united by the same truth. D'Angelo didn't just make music, he created space for people to heal. Even among those who never met him, the sense of loss is tangible, but that sadness is tempered by something larger, something luminous: gratitude. Gratitude for the years he gave to his craft, for the courage it took to bare his soul so openly, and for the timeless beauty he left behind. Because through all of this, the unanswered questions, the whispered rumors, the pain of his sudden absence, D'Angelo's family has chosen a path that feels truer to him than anything else: honesty. They've made a conscious decision to honor his memory, not through speculation or sensationalism, but through clarity and love. In interviews, the family has spoken softly but firmly about their intentions. They don't want D'Angelo remembered as a man lost to pain or confusion, but as an artist who learned how to transform that pain into something transcendent. Every song, every lyric, every live performance was part of a larger evolution, a spiritual journey toward peace. For them, truth isn't just a statement, it's a form of preservation. By telling the real story of his struggles, his redemption, and his final years of reflection, they ensure that his humanity isn't overshadowed by myth. D'Angelo, after all, was never interested in being a celebrity. He was interested in being real, and that's the beauty of his story. Even at the height of fame, when the industry crowned him the Prince of Neo-Soul, he kept his focus inward. He withdrew from the spotlight, not out of arrogance, but necessity. He wanted to understand himself, the man behind the music, the soul behind the sound. Those who knew him best often describe him as quiet, thoughtful, and deeply spiritual. They talk about his late-night recording sessions that felt less like work and more like worship. Music, for D'Angelo, was a sacred act, an offering to something greater than himself. So when his family says his final work wasn't about death, but about healing, it carries more than poetic weight, it carries truth. He wasn't documenting an ending, He was composing a transformation. His final songs, stripped bare of production polish, revealed a man who had finally made peace with his past and with the world around him. The unreleased project, Return to Love, now whispered about among fans, has become a symbol of that transformation. Those who have heard fragments describe it as haunting, spiritual, and profoundly human. A collection of songs that sound less like goodbyes and more like prayers whispered into eternity. In one of the final recordings, engineers say you can hear him take a long pause between takes, then murmur softly, "If this is the last one, let it mean something." That single line, raw and unscripted, carries the weight of everything D'Angelo stood for. Every note he ever sang meant something to him, to his fans, to the world that continues to celebrate him. Today, music critics and historians alike are reflecting on how rare it is for an artist to live and create with such emotional honesty. D'Angelo never chased trends, never molded himself to fit what radio wanted. He made art that demanded vulnerability from himself and from his listeners. That's why his music continues to feel alive, pulsing with warmth and truth long after his passing. The tributes have come from all corners of the industry. Artists like Erykah Badu, Maxwell, Lauryn Hill, and Questlove have shared memories that feel like poetry themselves. Questlove wrote, "He carried pain like melody, deep, beautiful, and heavy." Maxwell described him as a man who turned silence into sound and sound into salvation. These tributes speak to how deeply D'Angelo's artistry reshaped the soundscape of modern R&B, giving it soul when it risked losing heart. But beyond the awards, the acclaim, and the fame, D'Angelo's truest legacy may lie in the way he made people feel. His music was never just heard, it was felt. It reminded people that vulnerability is strength, that imperfection is beauty, and that even through pain, there is a path to grace. As the world continues to celebrate his life, his family has made their wishes clear. They want fans to remember D'Angelo, not as a man consumed by struggle, but as one who transcended it. They want his story to be told, not as a tragedy, but as a testament to resilience, creativity, and faith. Their hope is that when people listen to his songs, whether it's Lady Banna's Joint, or some future release from Return to Love, they won't just hear the notes, they'll feel the message he left behind, that love, in its purest form, is eternal, and perhaps that is D'Angelo's greatest legacy of all. His story doesn't end with his death. It continues every time someone finds comfort in his voice. Every time a melody of his becomes the soundtrack to someone's healing. He once wrote, "If my voice ever goes silent, remember, the music was my prayer." That prayer still echoes, in the quiet moments, in the late-night playlists, in the hearts of everyone who ever found a piece of themselves in his songs. D'Angelo's story, in the end, is not one of loss. It's one of redemption, of a man who turned pain into beauty, chaos into art, and silence into everlasting sound. His body may have failed, but his spirit didn't just endure, it soared. And as his family reminds the world, his life was never about the darkness he faced, but about the light he left behind. Through his music, his message, and his unwavering search for peace, D'Angelo continues to do what he always did best: heal hearts, one song at a time.